And good Wednesday to you. Ricky, I think your cell phone's ringing. We heard it just before we went live. It's Wednesday, October the 19th, 2016. Thank you for joining Carolina Weather Group on what will be a hosh-posh of an evening. We have a special guest for you from the Savannah region. His name is Ben Bolton. He will be telling us all about driving the wrong way on expressways. That's
there
right.
you go.
Yeah. Plus, we're going to catch up with a bunch of our panelists just to kind of find out what's going on in I don't want to say their neck of the woods because I feel like that's somebody else's term.
I wonder who that might be.
I wonder. And we're also going to be regaling you tonight with some high-class dinners. It's a very low-key, casual night here in the Carolina Weather Group. Matter of fact, I may or may not be doing the show in pajamas. But that's okay. The more you know. And with that, let's go up to Scotty to find out how things are in Morganton. And most importantly, Scotty, I want to know, have I missed the fall leaves, or is this weekend still looking pretty good?
Oh, this weekend's looking good. The wind's going to be blowing pretty hard with that cold front moving through. So I suspect that a lot of the leaves will be off the trees by the end of this weekend. But sure wouldn't feel like fall leaves today. We got up to 86 here where I live. I'm going to do a screen share here, and this is going to be kind of hard, so just bear with me for a second. There was numerous records. At last that I saw, 51 records that were broke today in the southeast with the heat. And can you guys see this?
Yep, gotcha.
All right, so I'm just going to scroll down Alabama, Georgia. Let's get down to the Carolinas. You can see Asheville and Charlotte, Greensboro and Raleigh all broke a record today. Greenville, South Carolina, North Charleston, Chattanooga, Tennessee, Knoxville, up there where you are, Ricky. You guys broke a record today. Several places in Virginia. So it was a very hot, unseasonably hot. Excuse me for that. Unseasonably hot day for all of the Southeast, and I think we're going to continue to see that heat one more day tomorrow. I know where David Reese is. I think you guys got up to 90 degrees today.
91.
91.
Gosh.
Wow. So
Yay, team.
it's hot. So one more day of the heat before wintertime, or not winter, but fall comes through. It's going to feel like winter after having the temps in the upper 80s. Upper 50s is going to be quite chilly with the breeze. So come up and look at the leaves this weekend here in the foothills and the mountains, and bring your hoodies because it's going to be cool.
Oh, so it'll actually be like fall?
Yeah, it's going to feel like fall Saturday. And then we warm up into the low mid-70s next week, so a little more fall-like here.
83 right now. 83 right now in the Queen City. Sorry, Scotty, I think I cut you off there at the very end, but fall leaves and fall temperatures in October sounds like a perfect combination in the mountains. Let's go up to David Reese, find out how things are in Charlottesville, Virginia, so that I can finish eating my frozen pizza.
It was hot today. It's been hot the past couple of days. In fact, today they hit 91 degrees, which is the latest that we have ever hit 90 degrees on record, and that includes records at CHO, which is the official reporting site and has been since November of 1998. So it only has a handful of years that have records. However, McCormick, which has records back to the 1890s, well, it hadn't had temperatures this warm this late on its recorded history. The last time was like 90 a day or two ago, back in 1938. So it was definitely record heat today. Points right now, actually 66. So it's a very summer-like night out there. Temperatures tomorrow, I think, will be mid to upper 80s. However, that cold front, it's going to do a number. I think temperatures will fall throughout the day on Friday, rain off and on, and then Saturday, UVA hosts UNC, and I think both teams are going to have to play in the wind. I'm forecasting wind speeds now anywhere between 15 to 25 miles per hour. Could see gusts upwards of 30 to 35 miles per hour. So then it's going to be breezy, and I'm going to be at that game, so I'm going to be freezing, and it should be entertaining because going from 91 on Wednesday to upper 50s, close to 60 by Saturday, it's what I'm calling temperature whiplash.
Sounds like we will be remembering that it's October before too long, so enjoy it while it lasts. Kit, you're not too far from me here. I'm in South Charlotte. You're in North Charlotte. You doing the same thing I'm doing? Windows closed, AC during the day, windows open at night?
Yeah, pretty much. I've got that feeling of just like, okay, it's time for like jeans. It's jeans weather. It's time to do that. So I've just like mentally moved on from warm weather, and I walk outside this morning to go to a 9:30 class wearing jeans, and halfway there I'm in a sweat, and I'm just like, come on. So it looks like in the weekend it'll be nice and cool, but I mean, I'm suffering from that whiplash of going back and forth. I enjoy it when it's like unpredictable like this from a forecasting perspective, but I don't want it to be that way here.
I agree. I started the day off in pants, quickly realized that was the wrong choice, and dug the shorts back out. Just because this is all my fault. It's because I put my summer clothes away.
Mm-hmm.
And now
James
started the day in pants.
Never put the summer clothes away.
You heard that too, huh, Ben?
I hear sound bites. We're trained to hear sound bites, right?
I wasn't going to be the one to say it.
I am not wearing pants right now. That's all I'm going to say about that.
That was going to be my question, and I didn't want us to go there, but we went there.
Oh, hey, Ricky, are you wearing pants right now? How are things up in your neck of the woods?
I am wearing pants, just for the record, and it's been a warm day up here, too. We're still in the lower 70s right now at 8 o'clock at night, which is pretty remarkable. I was digging through the data, though. Just sent this to Chris, who's filling in for our chief tonight. And we're talking about 80s, in October and how crazy it sounds to us. But the past 14 years, we've hit 80 or above in the Tri-Cities during the month of October. Our average temperature right now is supposed to be around 69 degrees. We hit 86 today, I think, or 85. So, above average for sure, but perhaps the 80s not as uncommon as we think they are.
And we are a very professional podcast, and you've caught me with a mouthful of frozen vegetables, because nothing goes better than with frozen pizza than frozen vegetables.
Are they still frozen right now?
I think so.
Man, you can tell that we've been out of the loop here for a couple of weeks.
I started this hour off by saying it's going to be a very casual hour, and that's why we brought on Ben this week.
Can I mention that this is episode 130 for the Carolina Weather Group?
Good, because if you said it was 100, then we were going to be in trouble.
And we're celebrating with food.
I was reminded
on the news
on a weather note by Facebook Memories just yesterday that this time last year I was doing a weathercast on television here, sharing a photo from Pennsylvania where they were experiencing their very first snowfall of the year. I'm not saying that's regular. I'm not saying that's irregular. I haven't actually checked. But it just goes to show difference a year can make.
And see, for the weather challenge right now, we're forecasting for Harrisburg, and today it got up to 84, I believe, which was 4 degrees above basically all of the guidance that we had. Like, I saw the max temp on one of them was like over 81, I think was what it was. So 3 degrees, that's just ridiculous. Yeah.
And Scotty's got a graphic up. What are we looking at here, Scotty?
Yeah, so this is from our friend Grant Gilmore. And I'm sorry tonight my earbuds aren't working, so if I accidentally mute or unmute myself, I apologize. But what a difference a year makes, basically, is the heading of this. Last year, the high temperature 61 in Greensboro, low 32. They actually had some frost. Today, the high was 88 and the low was 61. So that is a 1 year difference, and that just shows you how changing our weather conditions can be here in North Carolina and South Carolina and Virginia and Tennessee and anywhere in the Southeast.
So to drive that point home again, today's forecasted low was last year's forecasted high.
In our area, we
observed high.
Yeah.
Today, guys, was the lowest temperature last year that we ever hit in the Tri-Cities for the month of October. We hit 28 degrees on this date last year with a high of 64.
So I guess we can say this much to everyone watching at home. Aren't you glad it's not snowing?
Yeah, pretty much.
Although, if it was snowing, Kit, you wouldn't have school for like a week.
I know, it'd be glorious.
It'd be great.
Hey, if I'm not mistaken, Ricky, wasn't the some of the long range models spitting out a few snow flurries up in West Virginia and Virginia, I think next week or maybe at the end of this weekend, something like
Saturday, the front through Thursday night and Friday, it had some wraparound moisture bringing in. And this is starting to be the time of year, and David, you know this very well in your neck of the woods too, where we start to look at the Great Lakes for a little bit of a moisture source coming up, hitting the mountains of West Virginia up towards some of our mountains and northeast Tennessee towards High Knob a little bit, but also White Top, Mount Rogers, Rome Mountain, seeing those northwest flow snow events. Not, incredibly strong, but a few snowflakes here and there.
See, a classmate of mine, I think it was September 29th. He made a forecast and put it on the wall of shame we have now. But he said, based on the hour 384 run of the GFS, he said, on October 13th, there's going to be snow in the North Carolina mountains, which did not verify. There wasn't even the system there that was bringing that.
Thomas's forecast did not verify very well.
Oh, no, this was Corey this year.
Oh, somebody else.
But yeah,
it's
Thomas
nice
used to
see
do
that
that all
the
the time.
forecasts continue to be bad at 384 hours, thanks to the students at UNC Charlotte.
But guys, the real question is, what did the Farmer's Almanac call for?
Oh, gosh.
Penetrating cold. Someone can explain what penetrating cold means in a non-sexual way, then
We'll see.
this is a family show, right?
This is a
I was
family
about
show
to-
doing
let's
dinner
see.
hour.
They always say, like, when you the cold chills you to the bone, but then you added the clause of in a non-sexual way, so.
All right, well, I'm going
Anyways,
to segue
let's,
off of the conversation of systems and pop up the National Hurricane System, National Hurricane Center, looking at a system, 60% chance of development. And I don't know about you guys. I haven't had a whole lot of time to kind of dive into this, but I know it's been something that's been watching, and it kind of cut itself off and is trying to form here. 60% chance over the next.
48.
Oh, is that 48?
Yeah.
I can't mouse it over. I don't know why I can't mouse it over tonight.
Yeah, 60% in 48 days, and it should be 60 in 5 days as well. It was a little
Wow,
higher earlier.
48
It had
days.
80% yesterday. But, we don't have Shay on, but I'll take over for a moment. It's looking pretty disorganized, quite honestly. They were scheduled to perhaps investigate with the hurricane hunters earlier today, but they decided to not go with that one. And quite honestly, it's not really going to be a huge factor to anywhere on the East Coast because we've been talking about that cold front coming in. What's going to happen with that cold front is it's going to sweep this system out to sea with the trough associated with it. So the system, while it may form into a tropical depression, tropical storm, it's not looking like it's going to be a big deal. But the funny thing is, as James pulls up the visual images here in the infrared, the name of it, Invest 99L, which some of the weather weenies may remember was Hermine.
Yes. Invest 99L
Weathering.
should be retired.
That would solve all of our problems, wouldn't it?
I mean, look at that thing.
This
I would
over
say
here a
that's
little.
not a tropical storm, but I've seen worse things get named this year. So
Are we talking about storms still when you say you've seen worse things get named?
I've seen that one tropical depression get named that probably shouldn't have been a tropical depression, but that should be
Oh, and Scotty brings up a great point. Whatever happened to Nicole? And in case you're tuning in saying, well, who was Nicole? I missed it. It was the long-lost love of Matthew. So where is Nicole? Scotty?
Yeah. So Nicole is in the North Atlantic, and this from our friend Brett Watts up in Roanoke, Virginia. Nicole yesterday deposited about 5 to 10 feet of snow in Greenland. So Nicole was a tropical storm, then hurricane, major hurricane that went right through Bermuda. I think last week we had last week or early, all these storms have come together now. So whenever Nicole went through Bermuda, we had some videos up on our Facebook page and our Twitter page kind of showing you what was taking place in Bermuda. Now Nicole moving into the North Atlantic and producing 5 to 10 feet of snow. So that poses my question to you all. Would you ever like to have a hurricane that produced snow over you?
And it probably was some blizzard conditions, I imagine, in spots with the winds associated with it. I mean, it formed into an extratropical cyclone, but you got to think there's some wind field still associated with the system.
Yeah, 5 to 10 feet of snow. And I'm sure that happened, not a lot of time, maybe 4, 6, 8 hours or so. So it'd be interesting to be in Greenland.
Well,
Not
speaking
to
of,
bring up the cliche storm, but Sandy had a bit of, once it was after being hurricane status, it pulled around some snow moisture to the West Virginia mountains.
And our mountains, too. Actually, when it was still going on, we had blizzard warnings issued for Wise County. First time in many, many years they issued a blizzard warning. But it was funny because the forecast total said, I think it was anywhere between like 6 and 24 inches of snow was the range they gave for potential. I'm like, okay, well, good luck to me to beat that one there.
Yeah, right.
And we will be looking further into winter coming up in the weeks to come here on the Carolina Weather Group. But before we get too far into winter, I've got some video queued up on the screen from Ricky, who's going to walk us through this here. But we have a lot of folks still in the Carolinas and in portions of Georgia and elsewhere along the coast still trying to clean up from Hurricane Matthew. And so we're going to get to our guest, Ben Bolton, in just a moment, who was in Savannah, who evacuated with his family and is now back there. And they're going to update us on their personal cleanup efforts. But first, Ricky, tell me a little bit about what we're looking at here.
Yeah, so what you're seeing is a housing complex near Greenville, North Carolina. It's along the Tar River, which is about in the background there of the shot you're seeing right now. Some of these homes on stilts, other ones not on stilts, being impacted by the water after the flooding of Hurricane Floyd. The government kind of came in and raised some of these homes so they wouldn't be impacted by floodwaters again. But unfortunately, the water level coming up once again, really just thanks to all the rainfall upstream of Greenville. The rainfall from Raleigh coming down the Tar River and kind of cresting right in Greenville and impacting the community pretty heavily, especially on the north side, which includes the airport, large industrial areas. This video here is on the south side where a lot of students from ECU live, and these homes were flooded out for almost a good 5 or 6 days. It was in a mandatory evacuation area, and most people, I think, in the area did leave. Still saw a few people kayaking in or swimming into their homes, which is always an interesting sight. But kind of goes to show that the hurricane comes, and then part two of the hurricane comes, especially along the rivers.
And I think that's really the issue we saw with the storm is even after the storm came through, we had all of this saturated ground and all this water runoff that really had no place to go. And I know we're going to talk a lot about that here in a moment. But before we get straight to that conversation, I have just one nerdy question that I want to ask now before we get too deep into the weeds on the other conversation. What did you shoot this with, Ricky?
That's a DJI Phantom 3 standard.
All right. And tell us, we are hopefully going to be doing a show here in the coming weeks about drones. And I know a number of people may be looking to go this route either professionally with the FAA commercial license or personally for weather or for other reasons. So any feedback from you as it relates to that?
Well, personally, I think if you're looking for a relatively cheap way to get into the drone business or just for the hobby, good way to go. I've had no problems with mine, besides a little incident with a tree. That's, not the drone doing. That's my doing.
That was on you, wasn't it?
Say what?
I said that was on you, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was on me. Don't try to be too creative with your shots. It will end badly. But anyway, drones are becoming a much bigger thing now, not just for, cool video like that and video that really tells a story from a different point of view, but also from a standpoint of being able to see stuff from the sky, being able to see what's going on beyond your point of view for emergency managers, after tornadoes come through, the tornado damage surveys, trying to figure out whether it's a microburst or a tornado. But the key is, doing it safely. This was shot towards sunset when most of the helicopters that were flying around for the news stations already landed, and there wasn't really a factor with that. The airport was closed in the area. The hospitals weren't doing anything. And so, the key is making sure you're following the rules and not messing around with anything you shouldn't be messing with, especially after disasters, because a lot of times in this situation, you'll have rescue helicopters or you'll have some police helicopters and other stuff, and you don't want to get involved with that because, trust me, you'll be unhappy if your drone gets run into, but they'll be a lot more unhappy and probably angry, and you'll end up going to jail if you have some type of run-in with them. So.
Yes, and I know that's something a lot of people are trying to figure out right now. We're going to be talking about that, I think, in the weeks to come with our friend Rob Eicher, who some of you may know was on television here in Charlotte, now lives up in Boston. He just got his FAA certification to fly a drone commercially, sell the footage, sell the video. And so he's going to talk us a little through that because there is a key weather component there in addition to a lot of the things that Ricky was just talking about. And before we hop back over to the conversation about the storm, I just have to share this video that Ricky posted to Facebook earlier today. I assume shot with the same drone. This one, I think, closer to home to you, Ricky. But look at those fall colors. Here they come.
That was shot in Rome Mountain. We're actually shooting it for my television station using the FAA commercial stuff. Since I'm a pilot, I was able just to take the online test and get the license, Part 107. This was shot up at Rome Mountain yesterday. And some of the fall colors up there, a little hypnotizing if you stare at that for a while there. But really great fall colors showing up there. And the key with this one is this is in a state park. And so their policy states you have to call the park manager beforehand. And luckily I knew them from doing a few interviews in the past. So it was an easy conversation, but once again, making sure you're following all the regulations around the area.
Excellent point. And a little bit of a teaser of what to come in weeks to come, and we'll dive into that a little bit more. So, Ricky, thank you for shooting that and sharing that. But let's, I guess, turn back to what is still a lot of cleanup and a lot of flooding along the Carolina coast and including portions of the Georgia coast. And that's where Ben Bolton is. He is a journalist, a Savannah resident, and a friend of the show. I saw him catching up with David Reese just before we went live. So if you do watch the show often, you'll notice that a lot of the folks that David knows or I know or other folks know tend to somehow route back to Columbus, Georgia, and WRBL, and Ben Bolton is no exception. So, Ben, good evening to you, and I'll ask an easy question first. You getting those hot temperatures down there today, too?
It was a little bit hot, and thank you guys for having me on here. But it wasn't surprisingly too bad. David Reese was joshing me. It was actually hotter up in Virginia than it was down in Savannah, which is very random. I'll tell you this, though. Since Hurricane Matthew left, we've had some really great weather. Like, cleaning up, we've had the best weather. Like, the first few days afterwards, it wasn't so hot that you couldn't be in your house and it'd be suffocating without power and no air conditioning and things like that. So A-okay here in Savannah.
Well, that's good. So tell us, I know you evacuated to Atlanta and you came back, and I want to hear all about driving on the wrong side of the road, as serious and or funny as that may be. But tell us first, I know you guys are picking up a few trees, either on your home or on the home of some relatives.
Yeah, let me see if I can get the screen share to work here, and I can show you guys some pictures. So my house was actually okay, but my tree is a little loose. We're actually having to get it trimmed because if you walk around it, where it used to be solid padded dirt, it's loose, and your foot kind of goes through it. And if you play with it a little bit, you can see the roots have come up out of the ground. So it's we're having to really chop it down, make sure that if something happens again, it doesn't fall on our house or one of our sheds or something like that. But so my grandma's house was not so lucky. Let's see if I get this to work here. So I was standing on the tree. Can you guys see that?
Yeah, we got you, Ben.
Okay, so I was actually standing on the tree. It was on the fence line, actually broke the neighbor's fence and fell this way. As you can see, the right side of the tree hit part of the roof shingles there, and it actually put a few holes in the roof. We just now got it removed. It takes a couple of days. There's so many requests in between insurances evaluating all the damage to getting companies coming in. We have people from Alabama, all different states surrounding Georgia and the Carolinas that are in town to do all the different services and jobs like this. And luckily, we found somebody that we knew through somebody else, so there wasn't a price hike. Because we can get into this in a minute, but there was some price hike in hotels, farther out of the coast that people stayed at. But some roof damage there. Let's see if I can get this one to go. This one. So this is the one that if the picture were to pan right, if we had a little virtual reality or a little Google Cardboard, you could pan to the right. It's on my grandfather's shed. That caused more significant damage to that, but it was a very large tree as well. And let's see, I've got one more for you. This one kind of shows the part that was near the back entrance to my grandmother's house. So that's in there is the door to go inside. So damage-wise, it could have been a lot worse, but the trees kind of fell in a way where it wasn't all that bad. And what was crazy, driving home, we waited an extra day for several reasons. One, you didn't want to sit in traffic the whole time coming back. But you got back and you hit a certain point, and all of a sudden you see just a bunch of trees down. And the closer and closer we got to our neighborhood, we saw no power. None of the lights work, so everybody's doing four-way stops. And we have some large trees out in my part of Savannah. It's in the Montgomery part of Savannah, not too far for some water, and trees down everywhere, power lines, trees down on houses. I'm training for my first half marathon, so I've been running to, around the different neighborhoods and while I'm training to see everything. And it's crazy to see like these houses that I've seen for 20 something years, having to be rebuilt, trees on them, tarps everywhere. We have cranes throughout the neighborhood. So it was some serious damage. And I've talked to about 3 or 4 people that I know who stayed. Actually all of them were older males with families who told their families to go somewhere else and they'd stay. And every single one of them had said what they experienced from about 2:30 in the morning till 5 in the morning has convinced them they will never stay again. That's how scary it was. Pitch black, the wind's howling, you hear cracking, you hear generators exploding, you hear the trees falling, and you just don't know. And we had one person in Savannah pass away because of a tree falling through. He decided to stay, send his family on. So a lot of lessons learned from the Savannah side of things. We never get hit. We always have the threat, but it hits Florida or goes north because we're in that little armpit or kind of pocket. But it hit us pretty hard.
That's some pretty powerful words that and stories that people are sharing with you. Your grandparents, were they with you? Are they? I imagine they're safe.
Yeah, we made sure they got out of there. The minute that there was not a real solid projection or we didn't know, we decided we needed to go. Sometimes we've stayed when there are tropical storms or when you've got a better sense that it's going to hit more of the Florida mainland and it's just kind of the residual of the hurricane. But this is just a little bit different. And then past evacuations, we've only evacuated once in my lifetime. And that evacuation was just awful. So when we talk about getting out, this was a much better experience. The first time, I forgot which hurricane it was. It might have been evacuating for Hurricane Floyd. Is that around the right timeline, do you think?
Late 90s?
Yeah. I was a kid. We had 3 dogs. And that evacuation, they didn't open up both sides of the interstate coming out of Savannah. And it was, I think we left at 9 in the morning from Savannah and got to the place in Atlanta we were staying about 3 a.m. That's how long it took us to evacuate that time. This time we got to our location in about 7 hours, and it's usually a 4-hour trip. So much better. Once you could hop on the other side of the road, it was actually quite interesting, kind of fun. My grandma was with me, so she was kind of like freaked out a little bit, but yeah, we didn't know what kind of damage, what was going to happen at that point. But it was definitely interesting.
So I've got 2 questions for you here. Part 1 is, was there one thing that really stood out as, okay, this is the time we're going to get out of town? Is there one thing that, resonated in your mind, this is why we're going to evacuate?
I think the fact that there were more projections than normal that it was going to hug the coast and not actually hit Florida straight on as it usually does. And it was more of it's hard to say like exactly what the thing was. I think none of us just want to play with it. Also, part of this comes into my mom's health, which is one of the reasons I came back to Savannah. And we didn't want to risk, with some of the medical equipment that we have and medicines and things that need to be refrigerated, that we didn't want to have, we didn't be without power. And we didn't want to be in a situation where we're stuck and we can't get what we need. So it just felt like the right thing to do. But yeah, once we got to the Atlanta area and we watched the coverage and saw how everything was progressing, and the minute we saw it turn and start turning towards Savannah, and then obviously we didn't get the eye. It went up a little farther north than Savannah, but when we saw that happen, we were thankful that we got out of there, because the damage on Tybee, that was crazy. We have like a family beach house out there. We couldn't even go to it for like a week because they had blocked it off. So we were just the best move we could have made was to get out of there. And all the accounts from people who stayed said they would never stay again. So,
and I think that's a really good point you bring up because, I tell people all the time, it's not so much the storm sometimes, it's the aftermath. You mentioned not having power, not having stuff to refrigerate things in, and that can be a huge problem afterwards for so many people. Part two of my question goes back to the actual evacuation itself. So thankfully, we have not had to evacuate Hampton Roads yet. It'll come one day, and then I'm coming up to David Reese's house whenever it does. But, when you're going 7 hours, what was that like? Were you stuck in traffic a long time? Is it frustrating? Any tips for people who are going to evacuate in the future as to, kind of what they should do?
So the thing that made the difference this time that made it less frustrating was opening up the other side of the interstate. The most frustrating part, and this is just by chance, we didn't know exactly when they were going to open it up. No lie. Where we got out of Savannah, obviously the part where you get onto the I-16 ramp backed up. We knew that was coming. But there was a barrier right once you get on I-16 out of Savannah, and the barriers where you would cross over, literally 5 minutes after we passed the point where we could use that barrier, they opened it up. So the first section, we're sitting there, and my dad's in front of me, and we start seeing cars go to the left side and zoom by us. So we're all upset. We're mad because we're like, are you serious? They could have just opened it up 5 minutes ago. And I understand that you can't control these things. But then I think about 20 minutes up the road in bumper-to-bumper traffic, they had a second side or second way of converging over to the left side open. So we took that one. And once you're on that side, it wasn't so bad for about 2 hours. The convergence point where they put you back onto the correct side of the interstate was Dublin, around the Dublin, Georgia area. Now that was a little dicey just because they have to get both sides of the interstate down to one lane on the right lane so they can converge it back over and 2 lanes of traffic can move. So anytime you do the one lane thing, whether it was evacuation or construction in Atlanta, whatever else, it slows everything down. So that was frustrating because everybody's anxious. Everybody's got something they need to get to, or so not everybody's the most calm. And but there's a heavy police presence, a lot of security. So it wasn't like you could do something stupid and really compromise either side. They were really efficient with it. And then if you went further past that Dublin area, a lot of people stayed there. But if you went to Macon, Macon was also heavily congested. But once you were past that, it was fine.
What about for the people who were traveling? So you're in those other side of the lanes. They have accommodations, so let's turn like rest stops and everything open, or if someone were to break down or any of that. I know we have that in Virginia. We have a plan in place to close like gates and stuff along I-64, and they were supposed to position state troopers at every exit, have tow trucks on standby if need be. What was the Georgia plan like?
It was similar to that. Everything was closed. If you were on the left side, you had to stay on the left side till you got to the end, basically. They blocked off, unless you wanted to go off-road a little bit, which people did once they realized the left side was moving a lot faster. But, yeah, all the gates were down at all the exits. There was a police station at every gate. There were trucks stationed at the top of almost every major exit along the way. So there were plenty of provisions. And there were, a great number of people stopped on the side of the road. Because dogs need to stop and use the bathroom, whatever else. People did stop, and there were cops there to assist and everything like that. So overall, considering the prior experience we've had with evacuating, this was much better. So great job to all of them to making sure everybody got out, safe and efficiently, or as efficient as it possibly could be.
All right, last question from me, and then I'll turn it back over to anyone else who has a question. But you mentioned that you guys were glad you evacuated because you came back and you had some tree damage. You had people telling you how strong it was. And, with Savannah only experiencing not really sustained hurricane force winds, you guys had almost tropical storm force winds. We've seen some people say recently who didn't have a ton of damage at their homes, why did I evacuate? I'm mad I evacuated. I wasted my time. I would have been perfectly fine at my house. As someone who did leave and had damage, what would you say to people like that?
To each their own, and I think obviously, it depends how far inland you are in the Savannah area. We were close enough to water where we felt like we had to leave. But why would you risk it? I think I actually, looking back at it, I was probably more scared that there might be some looting involved, because I know there was some of that reported at some of the local stations here in Savannah. But the storm damage was far worse, and anybody who wanted to do anything, I mean, you couldn't even get around. To our neighborhood, it was blocked off for a couple of days. So the concern at the end of the day, if there's any chance that the hurricane's going to hit your area, whether it's just a part of it or something like that, it's not worth it to risk it. I mean, and even when we got back, we had, what did we have, like 4 or 5 days without power. So we bought a generator and did what we could with it so we could use the amenities we needed. And then once we got power back, it took another 2 or 3 days to get Wi-Fi and cable. And there are a lot of AT&T's having a really tough time fixing phone services in our area. Comcast has gotten most of their backup, but there's, power lines down everywhere, cable down everywhere, just stuff you don't want to be around, and we debated staying even longer in Atlanta, but we had to come back for several reasons. So I just don't think it's worth the risk.
And I think, that probably sums it up pretty well. Once again, you guys, as horrible as it was, we're only in tropical storm category 1 force winds along most of the coastline, not even category 3, 4, like some areas have experienced. So, we have this problem in Hampton Roads because we live in a hurricane area, and we have not seen a hurricane full force since, I would say, maybe Isabel. But that was more of a strong tropical storm with an influence of a lot of rainfall before that knocked down some trees. And so I feared the day, and David, you probably shared the same sentiment. Whenever the big one, quote unquote, comes up into our area and everyone's like, oh, I went through Isabel, I was fine, or, I survived this storm, so I'll be all right. And I just don't think people actually comprehend the significance that hurricanes can pose in terms of damage after a strong one. So,
well, and hopefully people learn. I mean, obviously people don't, because how many storms have we seen, the past ones that were, a Katrina level, things like that, where damage can come in really bad ways. And how many times do you have to see it to know that it's not something you want to experience firsthand? So, but it's tough. We're all kind of, people are stubborn sometimes, or they don't think it can happen to them, or what happens on TV, that is just TV. But that's why we all cover. That's why you guys have this group. That's why there's a lot of people dedicated to weather. And that's why, out of all the things, and this is a bigger discussion, rabbit hole that James and I go down, out of all the positions in a local news station, the one that's the most sustained and the people that kind of have a career to stay within the local news area is going to be weather, because that information can only be done a certain way. Obviously, the channels that you guys do it through, a Google Hangout or a Facebook Live, that can change things, but there's a reason why that sticks and why people turn on the television and to watch the weather, because that's where they want to get it. I mean, the Weather Channel did a great job, and a lot of the local stations following them on social media did a great job. And it's fun, and this might even be a better discussion for you guys as well, either now or later, the use of social media and disseminating information from not just through the media, but from the sources of people telling when to come back, what stage are they in letting people come back into Savannah, where power outages are. Everything was very well done using the technology we have. So,
all right, I promise I'll let everyone else jump in a moment. But this is really interesting to me, because as a meteorologist, it's great to hear people. I wish we could do more of these surveys on a wider scale of how people perceive the information and how they got it and why they decided to leave. But my question goes back to maybe not so much your perception, but especially your parents' perception, your family members' perception. What was the point where they started to realize that, this could be something bad? And people in your community too, friends, stuff like that, when they realized, this storm's not going to turn out, maybe we should actually start taking this seriously. Because I've seen storms where, the forecast track is dead on, heading right through our area. People are like, oh, it'll miss us. It always does.
Yeah, and nobody wants to leave. I mean, it's not like everybody's signing up, oh, it's evacuation, let's go. And I think for my parents, I think everybody's situation is different. The person that lives next to my grandpa, he's a father. He sent his wife and his 2 children, I think, to Atlanta or to get out of the way, but he stayed. And the difference is obviously there. You know, he felt like he needed to stay to keep guard of things or keep an eye out or whatever else. And he says he's not going to stay the next time. And that, those kind of accounts, I think that awareness helps people realize that they need to go. But I think everybody's situation is different depending on where you live in that city or the provisions that you need. And then there's people that are just going to ignore it. And that's their choice. But all considering, we are glad we left. We didn't want to, minimize what the experience we had to go through without power and things like that. We didn't know what we were going to come back to, but it was the right decision. And it's better to be cautious in that situation than it is to wish you didn't, because wishing you didn't can end in really bad ways. So.
I think, Ben, you got some really great points here. I think we could make some PSAs just from sound bites from Ben tonight. I have 2 questions, one about new media and one about old media, and I'll start with new media because you mentioned social media, and you're a pretty social media savvy person, so I'm sure you were watching it. What worked well? What didn't work well? What channels worked better than others? What's kind of your overall takeaway on how information was disseminated on social media? So
I think, the avenues and the platforms that we typically use were used almost in the same way, but in a much better way. So like in terms of video, that proves that you need to go. I think Facebook, I saw more use and interaction of local stations and the officials, the Georgia Power, the State Patrol, using Facebook as a way to send out video messages. And a lot of that comes with the people in charge of those entities are of the age more like my parents, a little bit older, and they understand Facebook a little better than they would using like Periscope or something like that. So I think Facebook they did a great job in showing video or sending out video messages, and not having to hold these press conferences like we would normally do, the whole roundabout of everybody show it with your camera, your live view. You didn't need that. You needed to disseminate it in a way and that you could use your phone or just your computer like we're doing to send that message out. Twitter, I use for more updates on the way that they were going to let us back into Savannah. They did, I forgot which account it was. It might have been the State Patrol or the Department of Public Safety or something like that. But they were tweeting out, we have 4 phases. These are the phases. And in order to actually, the one thing they didn't do right was I didn't understand that you should pin your information at the top of your Twitter account, because they spent the rest of the time, hundreds of just answering people's questions on Twitter, which is what they should do. But if you're going to announce something, you need to pin it at the top of your profile on Twitter. That's the reason it was made, so you can highlight something that people need to see at the top. That was my only thought that I got through, because I had to scroll through hundreds of, can we go back? When is this going to be open? What proof of, that we live in Savannah do we need? Because originally we needed a license and a bill saying that we lived in Savannah to get back in. That's why we waited too. But so that worked really well. And I think Facebook and Twitter are the 2 that most people used. So.
I think that's some good takeaway. And I like social media. You and I go down rabbit holes all the time talking about social media. I have another friend who lives in the greater Savannah area who's not on tonight, so it's not you that I'm talking about in a roundabout way, who, despite my insistence on getting a weather radio or battery-powered analog radio, did not get one. And sure enough, at some point, he lost power and he lost cell reception. Do you have one of these, and or would you ever consider getting one of these? Because at what point do you just need a good old-fashioned hand crank radio?
You know what? Actually, it's funny. We had a couple. We have a couple that we've had for years, actually. We gave one to my grandmother, and we had one, and I think it's smart to always have one. Actually, in the use we usually have it for, and so we don't use up data, because I think out where our little shed is, our Wi-Fi doesn't reach there, so we use it to put on music or something if we're working in the yard. That way we save the data. That was a big thing. Also, a big point. Want to make sure you remember this. Verizon gave us unlimited data for basically a week. And that was great because we didn't have to worry about it. We could use what we needed to use, the information we needed, and you could, watch something on YouTube or whatever else. Now, cell reception was bad, but you could still use those things. So that was a good benefit, that they weren't greedy, because a lot of people's bills would have been hiked like crazy if they didn't allow us to have unlimited text, calls, and data. So
a good use of the public spectrum, even the frequencies that are allocated for commercial use. We have about 10 minutes left, and I know we're going to try to get off tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern because of something that's happening on TV where people yell at each other, and we think a lot of you might want to go watch that.
I put you in jail.
So I will step aside a second to see if any of the other panelists have more questions for Ben on this topic, or if we want to squeeze in another topic here in the next 10 minutes. So I'll stand down a second.
Yeah, Ben, you kept saying this is like coming back and you didn't know what to expect or whatever. So kind of take us through your thought process as you were coming back down 16 and going through Savannah and everything else. And you said that you saw more trees down and this and that. So what kind of was your thought process as you were getting closer and closer to home?
We used the Waze app because we wanted to make sure we could get around any traffic, because there's a lot of reports of traffic back up getting back into Savannah, even though we waited an extra day and we didn't hit the bad traffic. So the Waze app kind of got us around, and when we got back into kind of the outer part of Savannah, it didn't seem so bad. You saw trees. Actually, on 16, as you got closer, you saw trees down on the interstate that had been moved to the side. And you're like, okay, well, you don't think that's going to happen to you or anybody you know. You get closer, and then there's a Truman Parkway here, and the Truman Parkway kind of takes you over the river that's near my house and towards my neighborhood. And once we got over that, and there's no power at any of the stoplights, and all you see are giant cut-up logs. I mean, just a day or two into recovery, giant cut-up logs along the side. And the closer and closer we got to my house, they used a church down the street, a Boy Scout meeting place down the street, and where a gas station was down the street as locations and hubs for all the equipment that they needed for the area. And I'm talking lines, just lines of Georgia Power, Alabama Power, a bunch of different states, trucks everywhere, utility vehicles just lined up. So it was really crazy to see, working 24 hours around the clock, mind you, because who was going to complain if it's loud outside your house knowing that you're going to get power back sooner rather than later? And in addition, we actually every day we would make sure we rode down the street or took bikes or something to go see where they were, because we knew we wouldn't get power until they worked their way back to our part of our neighborhood. So watching as they fix this light pole, or they moved these trees out the way, got these power lines off the road, and they kept progressing back towards our house. Eventually we got it back. But as you're driving down the street, you just see, my grandma, actually, I wish I could have, this sounds bad, but if you could have seen my grandma's reaction. Mine, I don't know if it's our generation or anything like that, but I kind of had prepared myself. One of our neighbors had said that there were trees down and that there was a tree down on my grandma's house. So we had known. We actually held that information from her so she didn't worry and freak out, because she's older. We didn't want to, mess with that. But as we got closer and closer, just insane, the amount of damage it caused, and just giant logs. I mean, it's hard to even put them into size. Some of the larger trees, you have to bigger than what you can make with your arms, just huge trunks. This one giant tree that's near a gas station close to my house, it's been there for, I don't know how many years. It's right in the middle of the street, just laying there, and just the farther and farther you got back, the more of those trees you saw. Got to our neighborhood, everybody's got them. The road right behind my house, actually. I have a fence in my backyard, and the house behind that, all those houses, those are the ones that had the cranes. All kinds of tree damage. It was just incredible. We felt so lucky that our house wasn't affected, because so many in our neighborhoods, or in my neighborhood, were. So coming back in, you were praying. We were lucky enough to have people that told us what our situations were, but the visceral reaction my grandmother had was more telling. Of she'd been here 80 something years, had never seen stuff like this. So sorry, I'm long-winded, by the way. You can tell I work in TV.
No, you're fine.
No worries. It's great.
Yeah. I was saying, hopefully no one sees another storm in Savannah or elsewhere anytime soon. My computer is lagging a little bit, but I assume my audio is coming through just fine.
Yeah. Well, one other note real quick, too.
Sure.
There were cases we've heard from people that evacuated, plus some friends that went to a wedding in the middle Georgia area not long after the hurricane hit, that certain hotels had canceled reservations they had prior and rebooked them with higher rates for people evacuating. So there's a bit of that going around too, and people are looking into it. So interesting stories there to look into for all the journalists, right?
And that's not uncommon because, that's a huge problem. I think there was one hotel, I forget where it was, but it went from like $99 a night to being $399 a night, which is illegal, stupid, and shouldn't happen. And hopefully they get fined a lot by the state attorney general whenever they find out about it. But
exactly.
I digress.
I better get my computer back under control, otherwise I'm not going to be able to stop this broadcast in 5 minutes. Speaking of the time crunch so we're in, Ben, let's shift gears a little bit. We'd like to give our guests an opportunity to share their Twitter handles, their social media presence, kind of talk about some of the other projects they have going. And I know you've got a sports podcast that I'm sure you'd love to plug.
Well, my Twitter handle is @Bolton Sports. I snagged a decent one for at least the broadcast round, I guess. But I do Bolton Sports Podcast, talk about all kinds of different things. It's not just sports. You can find it on SoundCloud. That's usually where I publish it. So college football is usually one of the main topics just because where we are in the South. But just in general, man, I'm happy that you guys had me. I got to talk about it a little bit. I hope you guys gained something from it or those watching did. I contribute where I can.
And I think we'll go up to Scotty in a second for a look at what's coming up in future weeks. Ben, thank you for taking the time out. Glad everyone is safe. Glad you got those trees out of there. And hopefully after a little bit of repair, everything will be back to normal real soon.
Thank you.
Scotty, what's coming up in the weeks to come?
Yeah, big thanks to Ben for coming on, and maybe we can snag him when we go more in depth with looking back at Matthew and the goods and the bads from that. So, Ben, thanks for coming on tonight. Maybe we can get you back on for that episode. Hopefully that we'll have in the next couple of weeks or month. I know Matthew has really messed up our schedule here on the Carolina Weather Group. So a lot of rescheduled shows coming up. Next week, we are going to be talking with Chrissy Kohler from Charleston, South Carolina. She's going to be talking about monsoons. We had originally planned for October to be all about flash flooding. Needless to say, did that become an issue with this month with Matthew affecting not only parts of North Carolina and South Carolina, but down into Georgia and Florida and the Caribbean. So we're going to try to get Marshall Shepard back on. I know that's who was supposed to be on our show tonight, or was it tonight? Yeah, tonight,
yes, I think so.
Yeah, so no.
It's a couple
Marshall
weeks ago.
Shepard was last week. Yeah, Marshall was last week because he was taping the show for Weather Geek. So we're working on getting Marshall back, hopefully sometime in the December time frame. Tonight was actually supposed to be about the South Carolina flood show that got canceled because of Matthew hitting. But we had to cancel that because flooding is still taking place in many parts of eastern North Carolina and South Carolina as well. So that show will be airing on the 9th of November, talking about the South Carolina flood show. November the 2nd, Life as a Meteorologist Student. We have several students coming on from Florida State and NC State. I know Kid will be on, so we're going to talk about – Ricky's going to moderate the discussion since Ricky was just there, so that's going to be a fun show. And then on the 16th of November, we're going to be having the Weather Pros back on. They're going to give us a prediction or kind of give us an outlook of what they think winter's going to be like. And Ricky, I saw your comment over there. I only seen it because I seen your comment on our page where it would be a fun show to moderate. So that's why I gave it to you.
I got voluntold just a minute ago. I was like, okay, I guess I'm moderating, which better in the presidential debates and the moderators they have. So.
Yes. But that's our show. We have some other things in the working, but nothing set in stone. But stay tuned to our Facebook page and our Twitter pages. As soon as we get these events rescheduled, we'll definitely put those out there so you can join them and bookmark the links and stuff like that. So I think I got everything covered, James. This is my notes right here, my notepad, and I hope I got everything covered. But if not, stay tuned to our social media platforms, and we'll make sure that you get the up-to-date information.
And social media platforms, also a great place, by the way. If there's something you're curious about and you want us to possibly do a show on it, let us know, because we are happy to accommodate.
And our website.
And our website, carolinawithergroup.com. Let us know what you think. It's always a work in progress, and Ben is laughing at me. Also, Ben, I think we're going to get out on time. We've got about 20 seconds until this debate starts, and I think we're going to get out on time for once ever. So thanks to everyone for tuning in. Stay tuned for more shows here on YouTube, on carolinawithergroup.com, and we will be enhancing our podcasts in the week to come, too. So if you are looking to take the audio with us on the go, that's coming to you in the next few weeks. Until then, I'm going to count down to 9 o'clock and actually get us out for once on time.